Hello and welcome to Pivotal People. Today we're going to be speaking to Harris Khan. Harris is the co-founder and chief executive officer at Curaa Group. Hi Harris, thank you very much for coming to join us today at Pivotal People, of which you are. Please can you just first of all tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, what your business is doing now, and how things are with your business right now?
We are a family-owned group of homes. There's 4 at the moment. We started our business just over 5 years ago.
Just before COVID?
Just before COVID.
Wow. 2
months before lockdown is when I walked into our first care home for the first time.
Wow.
So it was quite a steep learning curve.
Absolutely.
We've got a mix of nursing and residential, and it's all elderly care.
Okay. So that experience of coming into care. So before that, had you been working in care homes before?
No, I'm actually an ex-investment banker.
Okay.
And I used to do mergers and acquisitions for a living.
Okay. Right. So
very, very different.
Yeah. So you got the care home, and then COVID hit.
Yes.
And this was the biggest thing to hit the elderly care homes. I've been in care homes for 30 years, and that was just something different to ever has happened before. How did that affect your business?
Well, it was like anybody else. It was devastating. I think it affected me more personally because I had literally just taken all of our life savings and invested it in a care home. And then 2 months later, the very real possibility of us not having a care home, became very, very real. I was a bit smart in that I didn't give up my day job. So we wouldn't have been destitute as a family, but I have, other members of my family who are not immediate members of my family who have also entrusted me with some of their savings. And so I was very stressed out. We also had a situation where in that first location, obviously when COVID hit, a few people had to shield, and so we had to, I had to step in because our manager had to take time off.
So you had to step in as a care home manager?
I actually moved into the care home.
Wow.
And I lived there for 2 years.
For 2 years?
Oh, sorry, not 2 years, two or 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say that I got involved in everything, but I did get involved in enough stuff to gain a lot of knowledge very, very quickly. And I think that was actually what drove me to want to grow even more. Yeah.
My first thought is you buy a care home and COVID hits a few months later. That's disastrous. But actually as a provider, and having to actually go in and get on the floor and work with your team, that would have been a great learning curve actually, because none of us learned as much as we did during COVID.
Yeah, and I think that they were, I suppose from a personal perspective, I am always looking for, the glass half full. Have to be actually when you do your own business.
Yeah.
And so in the moment when all of this stuff was happening, I chose not to think about how I felt about it.
Yeah.
I just chose to focus on, whatever needed to be done. And believe it or not, I was picking up the phone and calling random companies in China to try and source PPE.
Really?
Yeah, because all of the PPE in our locality was effectively taken over for the NHS. So, our suppliers were calling us up and apologizing profusely and saying it's just,
It was difficult at the beginning, wasn't it? When we couldn't get anything, and then all of a sudden everything came at once, and every care home ended up full of PPE by the end of it, didn't they?
Yeah.
So but so that's a interesting start to your
Yes.
your
The
portfolio
journey,
growing.
yeah.
Yes. So then, how did you go from there? So what happened from then?
Well, I think the recovery for us was a little bit slow in the beginning, but as you said, things started to move fairly quickly. There were a lot of people who had sat on the sidelines and maybe chosen not to send their parents to a care home. But it all sort of came to a head, I think, maybe in the latter half of 2022, and things opened up, and we were full after that for a long period of time. And while I was very excited by the opportunity that it offered, I had a full-time job which was quite stable and I was doing well in. So it was a difficult choice that I had to make, but I think that those 2 weeks that I spent in the care home, I'd always imagined what it would be like, but I had not experienced it. And then experiencing it in a sort of once in a lifetime type situation like that, and then choosing to actually spend more time there than with my own family, which we'll discuss in therapy someday, I'm sure. It really embedded in me a very different level of respect for what it is we do as a sector. And I think if you ask around about me, you will find that I am actually one of the more vocal people when it comes to talking about government policy and how the sector is treated when big decisions, particularly around how our tax money is spent in this country. We always end up not even on the placards to be talked about. Absolutely.
And I think there is a lot more. There's a lot more of the providers now sort of going out there and trying to show the government how what's happening is affecting us. And it's a real challenge at the moment. It's a real challenge because of the way that we're treated as the second class to the NHS.
Correct.
And the NHS isn't particularly treated well either. It's a struggle. It is a struggle. So can we go back to the beginning? So I'm interested to know what it was that brought you from the stable career that you had, and I know you hung on to it during that time, but that stable career, what was it that made you venture into care homes in the first place?
I'm originally from Pakistan. I lived there during my teens, and my family had one of the only learning disability schools in the city that I grew up in. And as a child that got into trouble quite often, I was shipped over to the learning disability school to spend my summer working there.
Fantastic. What a great experience.
Yeah, it was, it really did form a part of my fabric. Having said that, I became a capitalist afterwards and then worked for 10 or more years doing mergers and acquisitions. But I think, the core of me was developed in those formative years. And doing that, I always felt the need to do something. Never really was able to give a name to it. And then when I felt that my time in, sort of the heady world of finance was coming to an end, I started thinking about what is it that I want to do. And so that's when I started thinking about care homes.
Yeah, I think that's with your financial head. Care homes are not always the best option. Certainly not now if you want to make lots of money. But you're right. It's not always about the money. It's about the good you can do and what you can do for those staff and those residents that you're looking after. And from what you've said, I think that's your focus, isn't it? Your staff and your residents.
Yeah, I think it was the realization ultimately that we talked a little bit about this previous to starting our conversation, which is really what it's about is how you define success. And I had already done the other bit, where it was all about, you know, what you put on your profit and loss, and you know, what you earn yourself.
Yep.
Which is one way to live. Won't knock it for the people that like that, but I find that there has to be a balance between that, and I'm one of those unfortunate people that really do need something else other than just cash in the bank to really feel like I've accomplished something.
Absolutely.
And so that's sort of what I was looking for, and I found it in spades in the sector. So, you know, we've got lots of challenges, but I really, even still, I cannot really see myself doing anything else.
Fantastic. So what about your teams? You've obviously went in with, you inherited teams when you got the care homes.
Yes.
And have you been able to keep those teams in place, or have you changed the teams? Or
I think there's always a lot of concern when ownership changes of a home, and our modus operandi has always been buying homes from people who are retiring.
Oh.
So these are very family-run, you know, environments, and there are really deep personal connections between the people that own the home and the people that work in the home. And so taking over in those sort of situations is very much about finding out what works for that group of people. And it's essentially joining a new family. So I chose never to make it sound like they were joining our family. It was I was joining theirs, and that has allowed us to retain a lot of the people that were there.
Great.
You know, the first management team that we got effectively when we bought the first care home is still very much part of our management team. A lot of people in that home have actually moved up, and some of them have actually got jobs in head office.
Good, yeah.
You know, because I think for me, you know, one of the key reasons why I want to stay in the sector, why I want to continue to grow, is because, you know, and we talk about this in lots of different ways, but ultimately we have to create a career path. And I am very, very aware of that, because I was lucky and I went into, you know, my first role, which was, you know, the next 10 years were mapped out. So if you hit all of these milestones, this is where you will be. And, you know, in care and many other sectors, this doesn't exist. And so we really need to, you know, it happens, but it's not verbalized correctly, it's not pushed out to the world, and so that also stops people from joining the sector, which is, you know, a great challenge. These days we only talk about funding, but outside of that, you know, the people that actually deliver the care on the floor, that's your only real asset.
It is.
And not nurturing it is a big mistake.
Yeah, I think there's the education of children in schools about what we do is not always there either. There's nothing out there about what happens in care homes and how,
No.
or even in any sort of care, even in the NHS. So I think for care homes, we've always been the poor relation. We've always felt like the poor relation, haven't we? And I think we do need to try and kick ourselves out of that and get the younger people in and get the career path flowing and get everything attractive. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I remember
there's so much opportunity.
Absolutely, there is.
For us to do what we do, but do it better.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, we've had a great uptake in going digital. I can't remember where I read it, but somewhere it said that over 4,000 or 5,000 care homes are now doing electronic care planning, which 5 years ago was less than half of that number.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is great progress. So it's a sector that is looking for, you know, that type of change.
Yeah.
I think we didn't have a lot of technology companies focused on us.
No. We have now, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge amount.
Yeah,
Everybody
absolutely.
wants to sell us their product. But they Yeah, I work in, at the moment I work for Fulcrum as Tony's the NI and I'm I'm the person that goes in and checks the care homes every month. And all of ours are now digital care plans. We've all got, most of them have got the Mars are digital.
Yeah.
And it's saving a lot of time and it's making everything a lot smoother. And
Absolutely.
making sure that people are reading care plans now rather than being shoved in a file somewhere.
That is the most important thing, actually.
It
You
is.
know, the first couple of years are all about adopting the technology.
Yep.
Now we all need to collectively spend time and make sure that the information that's going in there is of high quality, so that the output
Yeah.
is of high quality.
Yeah, I mean, what we find, consistency and quality
Correct.
of the care records is the most important thing. If we can get
Absolutely.
that right, then
I have bought more tablets for my homes than I care to admit.
Yeah.
But it is in aid of this goal, right? We really want care to be delivered and the record to be updated at the point of
live,
care.
yeah, live.
So that, you know, I regularly tell people, if I want to be sitting in, I don't know, pick a country, I should be able to say to myself, oh, I wonder how, you know, XYZ is doing. I saw her last week. Let me just go and check what she's been up to today.
Yeah.
And I really think that, you know, there is this challenge within our society right now where we won't look at those old elderly people in our, you know, relations who are going to eventually need this type of care, and we just think, oh, we'll deal with it when it happens. But when it does happen, very often it is devastating for the family, and because they don't understand anything, because they don't educate themselves on what all of these things actually mean. And so then they get lost and it's overwhelming, and that creates more problems. But we have a really good opportunity right now with all this digital uptake happening. Lots of AI companies are now trying to help us. We could turn it on its head and say, do you know what? If you're living abroad, but your mum or your dad is actually in a care home in the UK, you should be able to just talk to a device in your house and ask it, how is mum today?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Without having to call anyone.
Yeah.
That is already doable today with today's technology, but it is not in our sector right now. And so I'm hoping that is where some of these tech companies are, you know, working to take us, because that's what we actually need.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Yeah, I think the future of what you're doing. Are you planning to grow even bigger, or are you? Where are you going to be in 5 years' time?
Hopefully double the size.
Great.
That's the goal.
Great. How many beds have you got now?
We have 144 beds.
So that's it. Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck. I hope
Thank
it
you
goes
very
well.
much.
And thank you. That's been really, really interesting,
Pleasure.
Harris. Thank you.
Pleasure.